I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
Nobody
Who
wants
wants
that.
a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? The outrage.
Every way, Dory, it changed it for the worse.
They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
And let me tell you, she is not recovering from this anytime soon. Get this, Disney is reportedly blaming Rachel for Snow White being a flop.
Remember when Disney remakes were a guaranteed success? Those days are long gone. Snow White was expected to be the next big hit, but with mounting backlash and projected losses of $115 million, even Disney can't spin this disaster into a happy ending. Rachel Zegler finds herself at the center of this turmoil, as reports indicate that Snow White is on track to incur a staggering $115 million loss. Distribution experts estimate the film will generate around $295 million, which falls far short of the $410 million Disney spent on its production.
Got announced that Snow White is on pace to make a staggering $115 million loss amid all the Rachel Zegler drama, which Disney spent in making the movie.
This film was meant to be a triumph, a landmark moment that reimagined the first feature-length animated film that built Disney into a global powerhouse. With a production budget of $270 million, not to mention an additional $100 to $150 million spent on global marketing.
But the last two attempts for Disney just haven't worked, where Halle Bailey's Little Mermaid lost $25 million for Disney and Rachel Zegler's Snow White is way worse and it could lose up to $200 million.
Disney positioned this live-action remake as a cultural milestone. It was intended to breathe new life into a nearly century-old fairy tale. However, less than a month into its theatrical run, that promise has withered under harsh scrutiny. Disney's last two attempts at remakes have not fared well. Halle Bailey's Little Mermaid lost $25 million, and Rachel Zegler's Snow White is projected to lose even more, up to $200 million.
Is not having her year where her Snow White movie is going to lose $200 million for Disney, but doing so, she also screwed over Tangled in the process. When Rachel Zegler was cast as Snow White, she joined one of Disney's biggest franchises, which was Disney Princess, where they've done $45 billion in merchandise sales just in the last 25 years.
The numbers tell a brutal story. The film opened to a lukewarm $42.2 million domestically and suffered a catastrophic 66% drop in ticket sales during its second weekend. After just 2 weeks, it had only managed to scrape together $168.6 million globally, marking it as a box office bomb of epic proportions.
Remaking another animated classic instead of making something new. But yes, it's all Rachel Zegler and her behavior. And if it was just one comment, it probably would have been forgotten by now.
It became painfully clear that Disney wasn't just missing the mark. It was watching a monumental investment burn in slow motion. Rachel Zegler's casting as Snow White was supposed to be a significant moment for Disney, but it has turned into a disaster.
She's not going to be safe with the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless.
When she was cast, she joined one of Disney's most lucrative franchises, the Disney Princess brand, which has generated $45 billion in merchandise sales over the last 25 years. For years, Disney has dabbled in live-action remakes with varying degrees of success. Films like The Jungle Book, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast performed well financially, despite mixed critical reception.
Rachel Zegler, who plays the lead role, escalated things in an interview. However, even before the interview took place, many people didn't want Rachel as Snow White. Some said Rachel being a Latina doesn't suit the Snow White princess, as the character is supposed to be pale white, almost.
However, as the trend wore on, audiences became harder to impress. What once felt like nostalgic tributes began to feel like cynical cash grabs. Disney bet big on Snow White, believing that the brand power of the 1937 classic, combined with a fresh narrative, would create a cultural and financial juggernaut.
please don't tag me in the nonsensical discourse about my casting. I really, truly don't want to see it. At the end of the post, Rachel left the fans with a positive assurance of how every child should know they can be a princess while sharing childhood pictures of her dressed as a Disney.
They couldn't have been more wrong. Instead of creating something new, they opted to remake another animated classic. And Rachel Zegler's behavior has only added fuel to the fire. If it were just one comment, it might have been forgotten, but controversy has followed this project like a shadow.
Rachel Zegler is a perfect example of Gen Z who find everything and anything offense. If she didn't like the original Snow White, she shouldn't have auditioned for it, not even mentioning the fact that with her Latina skin, she's completely wrong for the role.
From the start, Zegler's casting sparked online debates. Her public comments about the original Snow White film, where she criticized its outdated values and expressed no desire to replicate the love story aspect, were met with backlash.
Rachel Zegler's disastrous public image is one of the largest in the live-action remake genre.
While her intentions may have been progressive, many fans interpreted her remarks as dismissive and insulting. Before the first trailer even dropped, the nostalgia-fueled audience Disney relies on felt alienated. Zegler's comments about her character not being saved by a prince and instead dreaming of becoming a leader were meant to portray a modern, empowered princess. However, they came off as condescending to many longtime fans. In a now viral interview, she referred to the original prince as a stalker, which only intensified the backlash.
Live-action reboots of the princess movies, and they have had success so far, with Cinderella making over $500 million on a budget of $90 million, and then Beauty and the Beast making $1.3 billion.
What Disney may have intended as a fresh feminist angle was perceived by many as an actress bashing the very legacy that gave her a platform. The backlash was immediate. YouTube videos dissecting her interviews garnered millions of views, and social media erupted with outrage. Hashtags trended across platforms, with commenters accusing her of mocking tradition and alienating the audience Disney depended on.
The internet exploded. MAGA supporters came at her hard, demanding Disney fire her from Snow White. Hashtags started trending, conservative influencers jumped in, and the calls to boycott the film hit maximum volume. At that point, Disney was over it. Executives were reportedly scrambling. They didn't know what to do with Rachel anymore.
Critics labeled her a perfect example of Gen Z's tendency to find offense in everything. Many argued that if she didn't like the original Snow White, she shouldn't have auditioned for the role. Then there was the issue of the dwarfs, or rather, the lack thereof. To avoid perpetuating stereotypes, Disney decided to abandon the traditional depiction of the seven dwarfs, replacing them with a diverse ensemble of magical creatures. While this change was well-intentioned, it stirred its own backlash, with critics arguing it further distanced the film from the beloved story fans remembered. The film's creative team seemed to mistake provocation for progress, assuming that subverting expectations would spark applause. Instead, it sparked resentment. The whimsical melodies and fairy tale charm of the original were replaced with heavy-handed messages and modernized dialogue, leaving the core audience wanting reverence rather than reinvention. As the film's release approached,
But Rachel, she wasn't making it easy. At this point, Rachel's relationship with Disney was already in the pits, and they literally just wanted her to go away.
panic reportedly set in behind the scenes. Leaks, rumors, and reshoots painted a picture of a production in disarray. Test screenings were tepid, and online chatter was overwhelmingly negative. When the reviews finally landed, they were merciless, panning the film as visually overproduced, emotionally hollow, and narratively confused.
They couldn't understand why Rachel chose to tie such a heavy political message to a Disney promo. Executives were not happy. Word is they were blowing up.
Audiences, already skeptical, responded in kind, either skipping the film entirely or skewering it on social media. Rachel Zegler, once seen as Disney's Golden Girl, found herself at the center of a public relations storm that spiraled far beyond the screen. Her off-camera behavior and statements became lightning rods in a culture war Disney wasn't prepared to fight.
of our abuelitas, to enjoy our arepa and habichuelas. Whether you think we're too Latina or not Latina enough, whatever we're called on to do.
What should have been a feel-good tale about a rising star playing a beloved princess instead morphed into a cautionary saga about public image, timing, and the fine line between advocacy and alienation. The internet exploded with backlash, and MAGA supporters demanded Disney fire her from Snow White. Hashtags trended, conservative influencers joined the fray, and calls to boycott the film reached a fever pitch. Disney executives were reportedly scrambling, unsure of how to handle Rachel anymore. Internal reports warned that public sentiment around the film and Zegler was souring fast, and social media monitoring teams flagged the backlash as it erupted across platforms. Disney's core demographic, families, parents, and nostalgic fans, was slipping away, and the film had become a political lightning rod in an election year, something Disney desperately wanted to avoid.
Even the production choices, but Disney had already poured so much money into the film and its marketing that they were basically stuck. And Rachel? She wasn't making it easy. Now, anyone in Rachel's situation would have at least laid low, because the worst thing you would want to do is strain your relationship with the studio even.
In a last-ditch effort to salvage both the film and the studio's reputation, Disney entered full damage control mode. Producer Mark Platt, a key figure behind the remake, reportedly flew across the country to meet with Zegler personally, delivering a direct message: stop tweeting, dial it back, and stay on script. However, the damage was already done. Zegler's past interviews, tweets, and clips had taken on a life of their own, endlessly recycled by critics and commentators. The court of public opinion had reached its verdict, and it wasn't pretty. The planned red carpet premiere, once envisioned as a grand spectacle, was quietly scrapped in favor of a subdued rollout. Marketing materials were overhauled to de-emphasize Zegler's character, relying instead on sweeping CGI shots and nostalgic references to the original.
The internet exploded. MAGA supporters came at her hard, demanding Disney fire her from Snow White. Hashtags started trending, conservative influencers jumped in, and the calls to boycott the film hit maximum volume. At that point, Disney was over it. Executives were reportedly scrambling. They didn't know what to do with Rachel.
Internally, the finger-pointing began. Executives traded blame in hushed meetings, with some accusing the marketing department of misjudging audience expectations, while others criticized the decision to modernize Snow White so drastically. Rumors began to swirl that Disney was distancing itself from Zegler entirely, with sources suggesting she had been quietly blacklisted from future projects. The fallout didn't stop with Snow White. The film's failure sent shockwaves through the entire studio, putting Disney's once confident live-action remake strategy under intense scrutiny. A planned adaptation of Tangled was shelved indefinitely as executives feared another backlash, especially with Tangled's passionate fanbase. As the dust settled, questions loomed large. Had Disney reached the breaking point of its remake era? Would this failure prompt a re-evaluation of its creative strategy? Or would Snow White be quietly swept under the rug? Another misfire in a long line of bloated projects that forgot what made audiences fall in love with these stories in the first place? The damage has been done, and the numbers don't lie. Rachel Zegler's future hangs in the balance, and one question still lingers. Will Disney learn from this fairy tale failure? Or will they repeat the same story with a different cast?